Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I've decided to create the video about my game settings for 4.0. I've had a lot of these questions in my live stream, people wanting to see the settings. It's easy for me to just blitz it and show it to you guys, but what it's not easy is to explain my reasoning and decision making when it comes to my settings. Important to note too that I do fly mouse in the right hand for pitch and yaw, and then some odd key bindings. Joystick for the strafes, so that's up, down, left, right, and the roll twist. And then I've got some pedals beneath my desk for my forward and back strafes. Yeah, keep in mind this isn't a keybind video, so I'm not going to go through the keybinds. But I will go through the settings. I will go through the customizations I've made to the joystick in the control section. I will go through the head tracking changes I've made. And lastly, I will go through the game settings. Now, just keep in mind that the game settings, which will be the first section in this video, a lot of that isn't up for debate. A lot of that's similar with all of our guys, with a lot of PvPers just in general. You can make some changes, like maybe 10%ish, just based off your experiences and maybe your preferences, but a lot of that isn't subject to change. Whether as the control settings, for example, the joystick, can be whatever your heart desires. Yeah, like I truly think that controls are something very personal. They come, like the cams and your joystick come into play. The position your joystick has, the weight of it. Does it have a bump? What kind of springs are you using with tension? All of that can impact your controls. So you can use my controls if you like as a baseline, but you should be expected to change them and make them fit your playstyle and your control scheme. Yeah. So let's get into the first section, which is the game settings. The first 10 or so options, these are just personal preference, like hints and vibration goes off for sure, but this is like subtitles and stuff, so we can skip this. This is up to you guys. The next 8 or so is FPS toggles, an interaction mode example. We can skip that. That's up to you guys. This isn't an FPS video. This is for flight. So I've moved my way down to the flight section, which is about a fifth of the way down in the settings, and we've gotten to the default flight sliders. So with that being said, automatic slowdown for me is on. That's like pulling your landing gear down and slowing you down. Fine with that. I want that on. Why? Because I'm not pulling the landing gear down in combat. Like one example of when you would want to have maybe the slowdown off for pulling the landing gear down, for example, is if you're a dropship pilot and you're trying to do rapid insertions, and like you're trying to hit the ground hard and fast and, you know, skim along it and then drop your guys off. Outside of that, I would leave it on default. It's better to just use the landing gear down to slow your ship and make landing inside your hangars or at destinations much easier and much more controlled. The speeds are really high without this, and this is just not a combat setting, again, unless you are specifically focusing on dropship piloting. Second, defaults coupled on. Now, here's the thing. I fly decoupled. 99% of the PvP player base plays decoupled. It's essential, guys. Like, if you're looking to get into dogfighting or competitive PvP specifically, or just PvP in general, you're massively hindering yourself with coupled. Also, it's got a gross feeling of control when you're in coupled because you're constantly wrestling against your own thrusters. Better to smooth that movement out and go into coupled. Again, if you're beginning, for example, I have decoupled bound or couple toggling bound on my mouse. So just keep that in mind. But I want my ship to be in a constant state of decoupled. The one time I'd be skeptical about decoupled is coming out of a hangar. It's very hard to control. A lot of the difficulty in flight comes with decoupled, and I'm thankful we have it. But keep in mind, you know, if you're brand new to dogfighting or PvP and you haven't touched decoupled yet, I would recommend going and putting some serious hours into maybe racing, just slowly moving through the verse, you know, Vandal Swarm and stuff. This is going to be a journey of learning and it is not going to be an easy experience in the beginning. So we definitely want to be decoupled as often as possible. We definitely do not want to forget whether or not we are in coupled or not. So we want this setting to reflect being in decoupled. Here's the kick. It's opposite. It's bugged, it looks like. So where it says default flight decoupled on, you would think you'd want it yes if you want to be constantly decoupled. Instead, you have to have it as no, and that will keep you decoupled. If you want to be coupled all the time, then you would hit this slider to yes, which I believe is the default state. Default flight ESP on, that's enhanced stick precision. You need that for aiming. We leave that as yes. Gravity compensation on, I leave this as yes. It is of no consequence and not noticeable, and I'm fine with it. G-safe on, no. The default state is yes, but you want to set this to no. As you go through these settings, you're probably going to discover how some of these settings are holding you back from reaching your potential when it comes to dogfighting. G-safe is one of them. G-safe intercepts your flight and makes sure that tries to protect you from blacking out or getting close or redding out. We don't want that. We want the training wheels off and to be able to reach our limits when we need to. So no slowdown mechanics, please. G-safe goes off. If you're having issues with blacking out, you've got a flight issue and you're not changing your strafe enough, you're not arresting your own momentum enough, and you need to just learn this through trial and error. But G-safe goes off. We don't want that hindering anything. Boost disables G-safe. Absolutely, that goes yes. Cruise mode on, that's up to you guys, personal preference, not a combat setting anyways, so I'll leave that up to you guys. Space brake enables boost, yes. Mind you, I don't use the space brake binding. I don't know many people that do it all. For me, if I want to slow my ship down, I just enter coupled, again using the key binding on the mouse. Speed limiter on, no. Yeah, the default state of this is yes, but you want this to be no. Reason being, we don't need this ship to lock us at SCM. We don't need this setting to slow our ship down, and we certainly do not want to have to think in the back of our mind, have I left the handbrake up? Essentially, speed limiter, right? The answer is we don't want to think about it, and we want to just learn to control our own speed, whether that's in nav or not, SCM or SCM boosted. So we hit this to no. This is imperative. You guys turn this off. You are going to die very often. Yeah, you do not want to put a hurdle or a task in front of having to reach speed. And then also keep in mind whether or not you have this speed limiter unlocked. A good example is you're getting pirated and you need to get out before they land in addiction or before they kill you. Oh no, I've left the speed limiter on. I'm not flying as fast as I think I am, and now I'm dead. Speed limiter goes off, boys. If you want to be competitive, you got to take that off immediately. Proximity assist, same, that goes off. We don't want anything intercepting flight based off getting close to whether it's terrain or ships. We want that off. Nothing can hinder our flight. We want full control. We set this to no. Yeah. Not worth being hassled about this or any impact on our flight changing whether we get close to a target. The entire point is to get close. The advanced HUD on SCM, this is new. I can't commend this enough. The advanced HUD is awesome, and we are definitely turning it on for SCM. What the advanced HUD does is changes these new MFDs and this new UI layout, and confines it closer to the pip, gives us the useful information we need in the area we want it, so that we don't have to move to the corners of our screen to get vital combat information like boost, weapon capacity, all that jazz. So we leave the advanced HUD on SCM as yes. Advanced HUD in nav, sure, why not? Not understanding our boost, etc. inside of nav, because nav does get used in combat. So we hit yes. Specifically when you're running away or trying to quickly ambush someone. So again, advanced HUD on both of these, yes, we absolutely love these features. You guys are going to love them too. Advanced HUD prefers labels. I select yes. You don't need to learn symbols. these brand new symbols that CIG have implemented on the advanced HUD. Instead, we prefer the lettering. So, for example, CPL representing coupled, ESP, the letters ESP representing your ESP being enabled, and stuff like that. Yeah. So, no need for the icons when the letters do just as fine. They don't take up more space. So, where I seriously recommend labels. The course prediction on, yep, absolutely. Default lights enabled, no. I would, especially in dogfighting, you shine like a lighthouse when you've got this on, especially if it's nighttime in an atmosphere. You do not want that, because players will instantly pick up on that you are a player, a target, possibly a threat. The lights go off, yeah. We used to constantly have to tell our guys, hey, your light's on, cut it out. HOTAS DOS invert toggle, this is up to you guys, not something I mess with. The relative throttle axis crossing trap time and trap threshold, don't know what it is, don't care. We all leave this as default. I do not know any pilot in our organization that has changed these settings because they're not impacting anything competitively. I have not bothered to learn it. ESP strength and dampening curvature. This is where we start to really understand how I play and how people play. You have to address these settings whether you are an expert player or not, because in 4.0 these got defaulted back to 1 and 1. We don't want that. The standard and what most players play with is 1 and 0 on this. You do want to have ESP enabled and working, so you do want to have that assist that helps you when you get closer to the pip. But you don't want this slowing it down any further than it needs to just basically function. If you have the dampening curvature up, you are slowing this process down gradually and ultimately adding input lag to your aiming experience. That is not what you want. You want to make use of this assist without causing issues. Yeah, problem is in dogfighting especially, there's a lot of course corrections, a lot of course changes by your target, meaning you have to rapidly update your aim, especially if they're making smaller minor adjustments in their flight. You have to compensate. You can't compensate if these settings are too high. So as far as the ESP strength, I'd sit it at 1. The lowest I would ever go is 0.8, and then I'd be questioning your sanity if you went lower than that. Keep it at 1, guys. You don't. If you start lowering this at all, it's because you're in the top 1% of players and you're really trying to push those 1% margins. Dampening curvature, again, we keep it at 0. There's some people that move this around, but yeah, all of us have it at 0. That should be enough. VJoy visibility, this is really smart, yeah? So if I select the VJoy visibility to always visible, you guys can see this line. Now, in master modes, it's a pitch-centric flight model unless you're flying alien ships. So you want to be in pitch. This line is a good guide, especially if you're doing like VOD review or reviewing your own fights. Saying you're in a fight, it doesn't go your way or it goes your way. You want to get some understanding of it. You want to review how you played. You shadow replay and you look at the clip, you can look at how well you're turning. So say if you're turning like this to get onto someone, you're using your yaw instead of your pitch. This is the slowest method of turning and really bad dogfighting. You need to keep people in your pitch, which is your vertical, yeah, to make the most of your turn rate. So for example, if you find after doing a VOD review or looking at your own fight, or say maybe someone's tutoring you, they're watching you dogfight like this, then they can tell you, hey, you're not using pitch enough. So it's just good. Like, you want to keep these verticals, then you understand if you're orientated correctly with your rolling, and keep your ship flying in the vertical straights and in the pitch meta. Yeah. So keep that in mind. So always visible is great, especially if you're in a learning process. You can disable it if you like. Joystick players, I would recommend using this too. This is a very great learning tool to how well you're playing. You don't know necessarily, especially after looking at the VOD or, having someone else watch how you play, how accurate your pitch turning is and how much you're maximizing your turn rate. So VJoy visibility should be always on. I'd let you guys know, majority of us, it's all on. Dead zone for mouse, personal preference. I've got it as yes. It's really aesthetic. Doesn't really change anything. The V-Joy range, yaw, and pitch. This is strictly aesthetic. It does not change your pitch and yaw speeds at all. Okay, it is only aesthetic. I don't want the line to be gigantic. I also don't want it to be small and unreadable. So I leave it as 11. You can put this to whatever you want. It's aesthetic. It's how long the line is. Mouse dead zone. I use the mouse dead zone, and I've got a very small one. This is just to avoid the oversteer mechanic that is in light fighters. Because of the way that this flight model has been programmed, the control input isn't 1-for-1. There's a little bit of delay there. That kind of gives balance between the joysticks and the mouse and stuff like that. The oversteer mechanic, and to be honest, I think it's a terrible mechanic, but you don't want that getting in the way of your flight. Now, the problem is if you move, your mouse a few millimeters to one direction and then need to cancel that because your actual intention was to go the other, you're now entering oversteer. So a little bit of mouse dead zone just gives you a little bit of freedom just to make sure that, especially a mouse with a high DPI, isn't creating errors in your flight for you. So just having a tiny little dead zone is great. By default, it's rather high, and you don't want it to be high because ultimately that is input delay. Yeah, you want to get from A to B as quickly as possible. You don't want to put a thing like a mouse dead zone in the way of that. But keep in mind, you also don't want to make errors. So there's a sweet spot. You guys find your sweet spot. This is a very personal setting. You might have to take into account the weight of your mouse, how nice your mouse pad is, and do you have skates like my brand new Ferrari skates on your mouse and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, very personal setting. Keep it low as possible. I wouldn't recommend taking it off, but I would not recommend using the default. 0.19 is just where I drag the slide. It's been nice to me. Velocity indicator should always be on. This is really good, especially for using nav when you're reaching these top speeds and you could really hit something. Better to just leave it on. That is the little X indicator where your direction of your ship is heading in. Driver and turret settings. This is not for multi-crew, this video, so I am going to skip these. These are all default and not gameplay loops I get into. So not worried about that, guys. Skipping past salvaging and tractor beams as well. So now we're on to the default weapon settings. Default convergence distance. This is for targeting, this is for aiming at and firing targets that aren't targetable. Good example is shooting at bunkers, maybe ground troops or a ground operation. That is where this is useful. Outside of that, the aiming and weapon system will handle the convergence distance for you. This is only if you can't target something. I've left it as stock, but I guess you could set this and customize it to the range that you are usually shooting at people when you're hovering above them in atmosphere. Yeah, this is for attacking outposts and stuff. It's up to you guys and where you decide. Just a little tip, I wouldn't keep it really low because if you're flying very low, you're very susceptible to railguns. So again, up to you guys. It's a default for me, not important. Default weapons magnified UI on is no. We don't need any zoom in mechanics or anything like that. The precision lines are no. Look, you could probably turn these on, but I don't need to bother with these, especially with the weapon convergence in 4.0. A lot of people leave these on. I just try to take as many elements as I don't need and I don't find important, so I keep it off. Staggered fire should not be enabled. We don't need that on at all. No combat advantage to that at all. Not bothering with it. Lag pips really common. It is distracting. It doesn't feel nice, and you want to make the aiming complex as simple as you can because you are playing a rapid aim-centric flight model and game where there is very little gaps in the capacitor and a whole lot of weapon uptime. You need to simplify your aiming experience. Using lag pip does not do that. I have a lag pip bound on the joystick, which I enable strictly when I'm stripping engines off like a Cutlass Black or a Constellation Andromeda, for example. But that is the only use case, and I don't recommend. Yeah, I don't For example, there's no one in our org using lag pips. You shouldn't either. It is going to make the experience just more difficult for no particular reason. Yes, I know other people use it, and yeah, they're not beating the better players without it. So just don't waste your time with lag, unless it's just a personal preference, but you're hindering yourself. Use single pips. I've got set to no, mainly because there was a bug with this in the 324 branch. Don't know if it carried over to the 4.0 branch, but I just unify my pip with having identical speeds on weapons, which is exactly what you want anyways. Up to you guys here, but I've got no, and we all aim to have our weapons at the same speeds, unless they're for specialization purposes. Fading pips, no value there, no point. Fading pips will fade as you get close to the target. So like say, your two fighters that have, come close to face, the pip will go away. No, we'd rather it still be there. We need that information. We need to know where it's heading and plan accordingly in the milliseconds that this moves around. So fading pips, nope. We keep that off. We want that information all the time. Gimbal modes, not something I mess with, not something that's competitive. Strictly competitive, guys. Not saying it doesn't happen, but nope. Armed missile can count loop is on yes. Desired impact point direction is only if it's in free look. Not a mechanic I use. Show, now we're up to vehicle targeting. We want this. Show heading. Yes, we absolutely want to know where our ships that we are targeting are heading in. Very critical information. Helps us plan merges, helps us catch targets, helps us plan ahead and adjust our course accordingly. So very important that goes on, yes. Show distance. Absolutely, we want to know the distance of the targets we've got, because that helps us plan for when we're going to start using our weapons. For example, you don't want to use, repeaters and start a fight off in the 1500 meter range, because you're going to be sprinkling it with a couple shots. So better to know the distance and where your weapon range becomes most effective. Show name. Absolutely. Information is king. We want to know the players we're going up against and coordinate with teammates in voice chat, for example, on who we're targeting. So we absolutely want that. Vehicle locked show trail. Yes. I think this is bugged. It keeps reverting to no, but you do want to know what the trail of the target direction is going in and has been going in. It's just vital information. That's exactly what we want. Auto selection behavior and target display mode. I've got these as defaults. Overflow behavior, again, defaults. Enable auto zoom on locked target. You want this set to no. It's distracting. It changes the way your pitch in your works, the sensitivity, because the screen is starting to zoom in, and what you're accustomed to before is not what you're playing inside of zoom. So distracting, no real point to this. And if you want to start utilizing zoom, then just bind it to a keybind, yeah? But no, we're going to set that to no. The max auto zoom level is redundant because we don't use it. Look ahead enable. This is if you're not using head tracking. Guys, the one of the coolest things about Star Citizen is head tracking. Whether you want to stay on mouse keyboard, that's completely fine. At least get a head tracker, yeah? It turns the game into 3D. It makes the experience so immersive. It is a lot of fun. It is the most important tool. I can't stress this enough. Get head tracking. If you don't have it, these settings are up to you. You would have these enabled, and you can mess with these sliders accordingly. I don't need to customize any of these because I use head tracking. Yeah, but if you're not using head tracking, fiddle with these sliders. Yeah, they'll help you simulate and get to where you want to when it comes to your look ahead. You don't want it heavy, but there is a argument for using it if you don't. So we can skip past the look ahead settings because we take advantage of head tracking. Turret, this is turret pilot, automatically enable target padlock. No. So this is what this does is when you target something, it locks the camera to the target. Not a bad idea, I would assume, and probably better to key bind it if you're not using head tracking, but we will move off of that. Next up, G-force in head induced head movement. This goes to 0 by standard by everyone. 0, we don't want that. G-force induced afterburner zoom. This is where if you start to use your boost, it zooms the camera in. Not for that, don't need it. Again, it's immersive, it's pretty cool, but you used afterburner often, and it is not tied to you wanting to zoom your camera in. So I wouldn't mind if this was a forced mechanic, maybe of boosting forward and maybe in nav mode especially, but in dogfighting, when you're in turn rate battles and stuff like that, you don't need your camera changing zoom in, zoom out. Yeah, you don't need to be messing with that. So that absolutely goes not off. Global camera shake, that goes off. It's distracting. We want the screen to be as stable as possible when we're trying to be competitive. The combat seats, this is just getting out of your ship. Look, personal preferences. But the next up are some party options. Show party nameplates, we absolutely want that. That's vital information when flying with groups. Friendly contact nameplates, absolutely. Neutral and hostile, we need to know. We need target information. Even if someone's neutral, doesn't mean they don't have bad intent. It just means they haven't engaged you yet. We want that as yes. Show contact distance, yes as well. This is some stream and some social settings. I don't care about these. And we get to our final important settings as well. Emissions, HUD display, signature values. We do want to know the emissions we're giving off. So we put that to yes. Lock pings on scanner mode, no. Show scan wave highlights on vehicle contacts and FPS contacts, yes. Vital for using the scan, especially at nighttime. Better to know where our target is in comparison to the ground. We're okay with the scan highlights, yeah? So absolutely. That is the game settings, guys. I'd say you want to be close to 80 to 90% of what I have. And if you want to make some changes, go for it, yeah? But that is my recommendation. Okay, graphics. Look, this is personal to your screens. The gamma, brightness, contrast, up to you. Resolution's just my stuff. Borderless is so I can alt-tab out of the game quicker. My render is just direct 3D. That's just a performance thing. Upscaling I keep as off. Reason I don't do upscaling is because it adds a little bit of input delay. We don't want that. It also really makes the radar very difficult to understand and see because it gets like very pixelated. So I wouldn't recommend going to upscaling. If you are upscaling and you need the frames, so be it. But if you're running a good rig, no need. Better to have the screen look better and reduce that input lag. HDR, up to you guys. Qualities, look, this is just preference, yeah. One thing I love to do and I really recommend is just making sure that the clouds are up high because it's awesome. I think these should be mandatory if they perform better, for sure. One setting too, motion blur VSync obviously go off, but what I want to show you guys is how I've got the field of view maxed. The film grain goes off as well. But I have it maxed so that I can see information on my HUD. Yeah, so like, you know, there's my capacitors, there's my comms, so I know who's online, my self target, my self window, my target, my shields directly, stuff like that. You want to make use of more than one MFD most of the time. If you're using the default, you're really only getting visibility on like 2 MFDs. Nope, we want 4. So again, I just have it zoomed out, but keep in mind that this will immediately impact your sensitivity settings. Yeah, so just keep that in mind, but I prefer to play with the zoomed out FOV. Also makes the game look better, makes your screen not feel as small, and it's just a setting I like. Audio, I'm going to skip over, and we get to the interesting stuff, which is the controls, okay? None of my settings are inverted, so I can avoid that. My mouse sensitivity, this is all stock. I believe this doesn't impact flight, but these are just default settings anyways. And mouse acceleration smoothing, we do not want enabled. ADS, this is FPS gameplay. Important that we get over to the joystick or other controllers, yeah? Pedals, you don't have to worry. They're very binary. It's just up, down. You don't need a whole lot of accuracy. You're not aiming with your feet. So I'm going to skip over the pedal settings because they just don't matter. But what I will do is show you guys the joystick. So here on HOTAS 1, we have my joystick settings. So I tend to play with a higher dead zones on my strafe. So this is my up, down, left, right, which is the X and Y axis. Reason I do this is because just because I'm strafing to the right does not necessarily mean I want to be strafing upwards at the same time, because then that hinders the direction I'm trying to go in. If I want to go, if in my mind I'm thinking about going right, then I want to go right. I'm pulling the stick to the right. If I'm pulling my stick 10% upwards, I'm slowing down that input in the direction I'm actually trying to go. So it's very important, especially in master modes. And this is, I think, to be honest, poor design, especially got hurt by the lack of tricording. But going in multiple directions can really hurt you. Yeah. It's really better to break these left, right, and up, down strafes as severely as possible, which is why I have brutal dead zones on these. Yeah. So there's no accidental input. And when I mean to go somewhere, I go somewhere. And it is completely intentional every time. I strafe with intent. Yeah. And no accidental slippage, no accidental inputs, everything on purpose. 17's a bit drastic, guys, but that's why. Dead zones on my others, this is like my, these are my pedals and my twist. Very accurate I need to be with the twist. Okay, I do not want a high dead zone on the twist. Roll is such an important aim tool, arguably where you need to be the most precise in Star Citizen, even more so than Pitch Your almost, because fights can be won or lost on how well you roll control. With that being said, the dead zones on this stays low because of that factor. Not the same problem I have with the strafes. The twist especially gets a low dead zone. I put it on 4 because there are micro movements. A stick can fall out of calibration after a long time and stuff, where it's throwing in tiny microscopic inputs. You don't want that impacting flight. So I have it there just as a safeguard to micro movements. Yeah. Next up, saturations. I put these saturations to 70 because I don't like to go all the way to the edge with my stick. If I'm going 70% of that way, especially also incorporating my dead zone into this, then this is fine with being my full input. I don't need to go this little extra length just to go to full speed. I'm very interested in being at full speed almost all the time. So why should I have to go all the way to the edge of the joystick? This is a long distance to travel here, guys. So nice to have your saturation somewhere where you feel like you can get to the edges and to top speed in those directions rather quickly and with intent. But also, with that being said, if you drag this too low, then you're removing the gradual progression of your stick. You need to aim with your strafes as well, guys. Like your strafe up, left, down, right is also very much there to assist you with your right hand device using pitch and yaw. You aim with both sticks or both controllers, not just your pitch and yaw. Otherwise, you're falling behind. So important that you have control over this. So we don't want the saturation too low. Otherwise, it's too jumpy. But we also don't want to be slowed down by the massive distance. For example, our joystick might have to travel to get the full speed, which is important. You need to get to that full speed. So you find a balance where you're at. It's 70 for me because my dead zones are so high. And I still want that accuracy. I still want to be able to aim with it. I still want to be able to control with it. The saturations on these, this is just personal. These X and Y rotations aren't even bound, so don't worry about them. Neither is the Z rotation. But the slider is my pedals, and I've just got them at 80%. Just so that when I am trying to go forward or back, I don't have to go all the way to the floor and bang it up against the floor of when it comes to my pedals. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. Again, not a key binding video, so we're going to skip right past this. And finally, we're just going to go to these settings. Now, there's 2 settings for head tracking I recommend. That is disabling it during FPS. And there's one more. I think it's here. We want it enabled all the time, but there's one more. It's enable roll in seats. Yeah. So you can turn this off. I just remembered I've actually disabled roll with my head tracking inside of the head tracking software. If you have not disabled it inside of your head tracking software, you can disable it here. Yeah, this is another fail safe. So that's it. In case, yeah, you don't want to, like with your head tracking, you strictly want it to operate with pitch in your, yeah. There's no value to roll. There's no value to forward and back that just will give you another axis that you have to worry about, yeah. So that is the settings video. It's funny, I wanted to make a quick 10-minute video. We're at 35 minutes. Sheesh, not the intent, guys. I apologize. But I want to give you guys the right, transparent, accurate information. Sorry guys, I bumped my microphone there. Anyways, so this is the early stages of getting into PvP and dogfighting. You have to start with the settings, so now you know, yeah? But you still have to learn how to fly and play. I would recommend joining a PvP organization. There's so many of them, and they're all recruiting. Make sure you just go find one that you think it would be a good home for you. They'll teach you how to play. They'll get you into some fights and give you some gameplay, yeah? Also, you know, the best way to learn is to just dive into the deep end and go into the arena commander, yeah? The what thing we tell our guys is you owe the arena commander, gods, or our org members 1,000 deaths to learn the game, yeah? No better way than head first. So it's gonna suck at the beginning, but that's what learning is, and we love difficulty in the game. Make sure you guys drop by the Discords. I got 2 of them. A personal one, which is not nearly as active as I'd like it to be. Working on it. Come help me with that. 2, the Big Shadow Moses Discord, which got like a ton of pilots, a lot of other orgs, developers, stuff like that. Make sure you guys come hang out in both. Lastly, drop by the live streams. Yeah, I love it. You guys come in and tell me you've seen video, enjoyed it, and whatever. And it's just super rewarding when you guys drop by, yeah, and say that you're from YouTube. So awesome. I will catch you guys in the next stream. Give me a 3, 2, 1. We'll hit it reverse this time. 3, 2, 1 if you got this far, guys. I appreciate you. See you in the comment section. Peace.